Hello, my name is Ryan McClure. I wrote the screenplay for Limbo, an animated TV comedy in Washington Improv Theater's screenplay writing course. I'll be reading the stage directions for the script, and now I'll have the rest of the cast introduce themselves.
My name is Adrian Garcia. I am going to be reading Customer.
Hi, my name is Cristina Ibarra, and I'll be reading for Google Home and Robert.
Macey, Schiff, and I'll be reading for Fantine de Glaze.
John in Tokyo, and I will be reading Ashton.
Zachary Murray, and I will be reading for Wilbur.
This is Cara Popecki, and I'm reading for Natalie.
Hey, I'm Clyde Thompson, and I'll be reading for Officer Steve.
I'm Elizabeth Leff, and I will be reading for Ghost of Mrs. de Glaze.
I'm Elizabeth Fulton, and I'll be reading for Officer Ted.
Teaser. Interior Limbo Investigations Office. Morning. A customer, 50, gruff, barges into Limbo Investigations, a small, messy private investigator's office. Natalie, 30, headstrong, rugged, angrily leans on her cluttered desk, arguing with Ashton, 30, intellectual. Ashton is in the same position behind his organized desk. They don't notice the customer. Wilbur, talking cat, mischievous, sleeps on Natalie's desk.
Ash, you have to get us off Google results when people search for Limbo polls. They keep calling asking if we have any for sale.
What do you want me to do? I don't know how Google works.
You're the smart one. Figure it out.
Ashton leans toward the Google Home on his desk.
Hey, Google. Call Google.
To learn how to get help with your Google Nest device, go to g.co/nest/contact.
Excuse me.
Natalie and Ashton abruptly turn toward the customer.
I have a case. Which one of you is the private investigator?
Natalie and Ashton angrily sit in unison.
We both are.
What? Are you married?
What? No. Ew. Yuck. Ugh. Gross. Don't be a perv. We're twins. I'm Natalie Walker.
And I'm Ashton Walker.
Ashton pulls out a notepad and click pen from his desk. He loudly clicks the pen.
What can we help you with today, sir?
My husband bought a vase and put it in a closet.
And what, sir, is the problem with your husband buying a vase?
The customer paces back and forth.
I hate pottery, so he wouldn't buy it for me. And if he were buying it for himself, why would he put it in a closet? So he must have bought it for someone else. But who?
The customer abruptly turns towards Natalie and Ashton.
Obviously, he brought it for Clyde, his hot 20-something ceramics teacher at the Art League, where he just started beginner's pottery class.
The customer starts to cry.
He must be having an affair. I need you to follow him and find out. I'll pay you whatever you want.
Ashton clicks his pen and puts it and the notepad away.
We cannot take your case.
What? Why? My money's not good enough?
Your money is not the issue. We're paranormal investigators.
Like those ghost hunters on TV?
Ashton angrily jumps up.
Absolutely not. Those charlatans peddle cheap entertainment for the masses. We offer an invaluable service to the undead, solving the problems that keep them from moving on to the afterlife.
That's ridiculous. Ghosts aren't real.
Wilbur jumps from Natalie's desk into the customer's arms.
Ghosts are real. I'm a ghost. I possess this cat, but got stuck in its body. Now I can't cross over to the other side. Boo!
Wilbur jumps onto the floor. The customer faints.
Wilbur, you have to stop doing that to potential clients.
Wilbur walks onto the man's chest and kneads it.
Hey, if I'm going to be spending the rest of the eternity as a cat, I might as well have some fun.
Wilbur curls up on the man's body and goes to sleep. End of teaser. Act 1. Exterior, For Goodness Bakes, night. Police stand outside For Goodness Bakes Bakery. It is foggy. The bakery is roped off with police tape. Paramedics wheel out a body bag and place it in an ambulance. Ashton and Natalie stand next to Officer Steve, 40, mean-spirited, and Officer Ted, 40, mean-spirited. Natalie points to the crime scene. Ashton smokes a cigarette. Wilbur sits in Natalie's backpack, looking over her shoulder.
I'm not going to say this again. I won't let you two inside to snoop around. We're investigating a murder scene.
Natalie throws her hands in the air.
But we're here to investigate too, and we can do things that you guys can't. Listen, just let us tiptoe in.
Natalie pantomimes tiptoeing with her fingers.
Perform a quick seance.
Wilbur pulls out a Ouija board from Natalie's backpack with his teeth. Natalie grabs it and holds it up with one hand.
And find out who the killer is.
She holds out her other hand and counts on each finger.
It's a win, 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 lose. That's a win for us, a win for you, a win for the ghost, and a lose for the killer. You could throw in a fifth win for society too, since there will be one less killer on the streets.
Natalie holds up her open hand to the cop for a high five. The cop leaves her hanging.
That's 4-1. Come on, don't leave me hanging.
Seance, ghost, stop wasting our time. If you two bozos ask us one more time, I'm gonna arrest you for obstructing justice.
Natalie points to Officer Ted.
We're not bozos. You're the bozo, Big Nose.
Officer Ted pulls out a compact mirror from his pocket and intensely examines his nose.
My nose isn't big, is it, Steve?
And you know what? Ghost lives matter.
Ghosts don't have lives, dum-dum. They're dead.
Officer Ted spins around in circles, trying to get a better angle of his nose in the mirror.
Steve, tell me, is my nose too big?
Officer Steve stops Officer Ted's spinning and affectionately holds his hands.
Hey. Don't listen to her. She's just a dum-dum. Your nose is perfect, just like you.
Officer Steve gives Officer Ted's nose a quick kiss. Ashton throws his cigarette to the ground and steps on it.
Let's go, Nat. We're not going to find a new client tonight.
Natalie and Wilbur stick their tongues out at the police officers. Ashton and Natalie walk several yards from the police. Wilbur points towards Fantine, 17, timid, who is standing with her back to the crime scene.
Ash, there's someone next to that tree. Maybe they saw something.
Let's go ask.
Ashton pets Wilbur's head.
And no talking, Wilbur. We don't want to frighten them away.
Fine. I'll be all meow, meow, meow. But if this leads to a client, you're taking me to Nintendo World.
No way. Not after what you did at Disneyland. I don't want to become the detective permanently banned from 2 theme parks.
That wasn't my fault. The mouse started it.
Natalie holds up her hands to defuse the situation.
Hey, we all agreed not to bring up the Disney incident again, didn't we?
Fine.
Fine.
Natalie and Ashton approach Fantine. Fantine does not turn around.
Hi there, I'm Natalie Walker. This is my brother Ashton Walker, and this is Wilbur.
Natalie scratches Wilbur under the chin.
Meow. Oops.
Wilbur clears out his throat and meows like a cat. Fantine blows her nose and doesn't notice Wilbur's mistake.
We're investigators. Do you know the person who was killed?
Yes, I knew her.
Fantine slowly turns to face them. Tears are in her eyes.
Are you with the police?
Natalie laughs sarcastically.
The police? Those bozos couldn't find a foot in a shoe.
We provide services that the police cannot offer.
Wilbur pulls out a business card from Natalie's backpack with his mouth and jumps onto Natalie's shoulder, holding out the card. Fantine timidly takes it and reads it.
Limbo Investigations. Detectives for the dead?
Fantine looks up.
What do you mean, detectives for the dead?
Natalie excitedly claps.
I'm so glad you asked.
I wish you hadn't asked.
Allow me to explain.
Natalie puts her backpack down. Wilbur jumps out. She quickly pulls out a slide projector and screen and assembles them. The first slide shows the Limbo Investigations logo.
It means that we here at Limbo Investigations only handle cases involving...
Natalie goes to this next slide, a picture of a Casper-like ghost. She hits the screen with a long pointer.
Ghosts.
The next slide shows a tea set floating above a table where people are having high tea. She hits the screen.
Spirits.
The next slide shows people running out the front door of a mansion. She hits the screen again.
Hauntings.
The next slide shows a young girl spider walking down the stairs, like in The Exorcist. She hits the screen.
And the occasional possession, so long as the possession is not demonic in nature. Our insurance will not cover demons.
Our insurance will not cover demons.
Ashton rolls his eyes.
She does that exact same presentation every time someone asks about the card.
Wilbur jumps into Fantine's arms. She pets him.
Do you believe in fate, Mr. Walker?
I believe that the universe is an enigma filled with unknowable mysteries, and that we humans are sometimes drawn together by forces beyond our comprehension.
And by that, Ash means yes.
I believe in fate too. And I believe that fate brought us here tonight, Mr. Walker, because the person killed tonight was my mother.
Oh my God, yes.
Startled, Fantine jumps. Natalie excitedly karate kicks the air in front of her. Ashton looks at her disapprovingly.
Sorry, I didn't mean that about your mom being murdered. Moms should remain 100% unmurdered. We should know. Our mom was murdered too, and our dad, at the same time. They're the ones who taught us how to contact the dead, but we haven't been able to contact them. Some force is preventing us from making contact, see?
Natalie proceeds to the next slide, a picture of Natalie and Ashton's parents. Under the picture is written, Mom and Dad, heart. Now ghosts, 3 question marks. Who killed them? 4 exclamation marks, 4 question marks. Must solve, 5 exclamation marks. She hits the screen with the pointer.
Ash and I are looking for their ghosts.
Natalie angrily punches the air in front of her.
That we can find out who killed them, help them cross over to the other side, and take our revenge.
Natalie proceeds to the last slide, a picture of Wilbur holding a sign in his mouth that reads, The End.
I just meant that Ash and I can help find out who killed your mom.
Ashton pulls out a small notepad and a click pen from his pocket. He loudly clicks the pen.
What makes you think your mother was murdered, miss?
Fantine de Glaze. My mother owned this bakery. She got it from her mother, and her mother got it from hers, and her mother got it from hers, and hers. The de Glaze women have been baking in this town for 5 generations. The paramedics said that my mother died of a heart attack. But, Mr. Walker, my mother was the healthiest woman I know. Foul play must have been involved. The police don't believe me, though.
Ashton quickly writes in his notepad.
I believe you, Mr. Glaze.
Hashtag believe women.
Ashton clicks his pen and puts it and the notepad away.
However, it's getting late. Come to our office tomorrow morning and bring a personal item of your mother's. I would like to ask you a few more questions.
I will. I don't know about ghosts, Mr. Walker, but I'll do anything to find out who killed my mother. Thank you for believing me.
Fantine puts Wilbur down, turns, and walks into the fog, fading out of view.
Ask her to bring some donuts with her too.
And bring some donuts if you can. Maybe a couple death by chocolates.
Ashton disapprovingly glares at Natalie.
Really, Nat?
What? They're delicious.
Death by chocolate.
Natalie's eyes bulge with embarrassment, and she covers her mouth with both hands.
Oh no, I wasn't thinking. They're just the most popular flavor they sell.
Natalie cups her hands to her mouth and shouts into the fog.
Or you could bring some Boston creams, or French crullers, or donut holes. Just don't bring any jelly donuts.
End of Act 1. Act 2. Interior, Limbo Investigations, Office. The next morning, Fantine timidly opens the door to Limbo Investigations and walks inside. Natalie angrily leans on her extremely cluttered desk, arguing with Ashton. Ashton is in the same position behind his spotless desk. Wilbur is playing with the crumpled paper on the floor. They don't notice Fantine.
You're being unreasonable. Just picture it. Me, you, Wilbur, standing back to back to back, our arms crossed in a cool guy pose.
Natalie waves her arms in the air in a grandiose fashion.
On a billboard, towering 100 feet over the interstate like giants.
Natalie holds up her hand and moves it left to right, indicating a text box.
Underneath us in big, bold writing, Limbo Investigations.
Natalie holds up the opposite hand and moves it right to left, indicating more text.
Do you have a loved one who died under mysterious circumstances? 3 question marks. They were probably murdered. Let us find their killer! Exclamation point.
Natalie moves her original hand left to right, indicating even more text.
Brother and sister twin detectives. Our parents were murdered too.
Natalie moves the opposite hand right to left, indicating yet more text.
Also, we have a talking cat.
Ashton jumps up and pounds his table with his fist.
No, I refuse to have my likeness plastered on a highway sign like some ambulance chaser.
But we get so many more clients if we advertised.
Fantine gently coughs to get their attention.
Excuse me.
Natalie and Ashton suddenly turn. Natalie throws her arms open wide.
Fantine, you're here.
Behind Fantine, Wilbur meows, opens his mouth, and points.
Did you bring donuts?
The police closed the bakery for their investigation. I couldn't bring any.
Natalie picks up a mug from her desk and throws it at the wall. It shatters.
A cab.
Ashton gestures to an empty seat in front of his desk.
Mr. Glaze, please sit. We have some questions for you.
Fantine sits. Wilbur jumps onto her lap. Fantine pets his head. Natalie sits on the edge of Ashton's desk. Ashton pulls out a notepad and pen. He loudly clicks the pen.
Is there anyone who would have wanted to harm your mother?
Yes, Mr. Walker. The bakery, despite its success, was in massive debt. My mother was a phenomenal baker and a terrible gambler. It could have been a loan shark.
Ashton writes a note, clicks his pen, and closes his notepad.
Well, that gives us a motive and a suspect.
Also, my grandmother had 2 daughters.
Ashton quickly opens his notepad again and takes notes.
She gave the bakery to my mother in her will and left nothing to my aunt, her oldest daughter, because she married a Hollywood makeup artist who doesn't eat carbohydrates. My aunt has hated my mother ever since.
Ashton clicks his pen and closes his notepad.
Well, 2 suspects. Certainly complicates things.
My mother was also rivals with the woman who owns the donut shop in the next town over.
Ashton sighs, reopens his notepad, clicks his pen, and takes notes.
They competed for years against each other in the competitive baking scene, but my mother always won. After my mother's last victory at the Intercontinental Competitive Cupcake Cup competition, the woman said she couldn't live with the humiliation anymore.
Ashton stops taking notes and looks at Fantine expectantly. After a brief pause, Fantine continues.
Well, and then there was the butcher and the candlestick maker.
Ashton holds up his hand to stop her.
All right, Mr. Glaze, it sounds like your mother had a lot of potential enemies. This will make things more difficult.
Hold up. One more question.
Natalie narrows her eyes and leans in close to Fantine.
Was your mother married?
Yes, she recently remarried. My father, her first husband, passed away years ago.
Natalie leans back, kicks up her feet, and dramatically wipes her hands clean in the air.
That's it. He's the killer. Case closed.
But they were very happily married, Miss Walker.
Doesn't matter. As any true crime show will tell you, 9 times out of 10, the husband did it.
Ashton clicks his pen twice.
I'm less certain of that than my sister, Mr. Glaze. If your mother was indeed murdered, her spirit may be lingering on the mortal plane. With your consent, I would like to try to summon her spirit.
Yes, Mr. Walker, I consent.
Ashton stands up and places his hands on his table with authority.
Follow me to the summoning chamber.
Natalie leans in close to Fantine, puts her hand up to her mouth, and whispers,
It used to be our supply closet.
Ashton leads Fantine into a back room. Natalie and Wilbur follow them.
Okay, but I'm telling you both now, it's gonna be the husband.
Interior Limbo Investigations Summoning Room. Continuous. Ashton leads Fantine, Natalie, and Wilbur into a cramped room. In the center of the room is a small, ornate table with an Ouroboros carved into it. A lit candle sits atop it. Natalie closes the door behind them.
Natalie and I have a gift of being able to communicate with the spirit realm. In this room, the barrier between the mortal realm and the spirit realm is weak.
Ashton traces the Ouroboros with his finger.
This table magnifies that weakness, allowing us to physically summon the spirits of the dead. All we need is an object to act as a homing beacon for the spirit.
Did you bring something of your mother's?
Fantine pulls out a large, heavy rolling pin from her purse.
Yes, my mother's rolling pin. She used it every day.
To roll out the dough for her donuts?
No, to kill the rats who got into her kitchen.
Fantine begins to cry and hugs the rolling pin.
No, which she loved more? The look of happiness on a child's face when they bit into one of her donuts, or the fear on a rat's face the second before she crushed its skull.
Natalie walks to Fantine and places a comforting arm around her shoulder.
Your mother contained multitudes.
Natalie takes the rolling pin and places it in the center of the table.
Now let's find out if your mom was murdered like one of those rats.
I'm going to turn off the lights. When I do, think of your mother.
Ashton flips off the lights, leaving the room illuminated solely by the candle.
Mr. Glaze, can you hear us? Give us a sign.
Natalie, Ashton, and Fantine wait in silence for a moment.
I don't hear anything.
I don't either.
Ashton pats the tip of his nose with his finger.
But do you smell that?
Natalie and Fantine loudly breathe in with their noses.
It smells like a vanilla candle?
Fantine stumbles backwards. Natalie catches her.
That's no candle, Miss Walker. That's the smell of my mother's been there, done that vanilla bean donut.
A pillar of fire erupts from the candle. Natalie and Ashton shield their eyes. A vortex of wind blows around them. The table begins to shake. A pillar of blood erupts from the Ouroboros. The blood rains down from the ceiling.
Mom, are you here?
The rolling pin floats up from the table and violently swings back and forth. Wilbur meows and jumps into Natalie's arms.
Mrs. de Glaze?
Suddenly, everything in the room stops. It is plunged into total darkness. The rolling pin falls to the table with a loud thud. The candle suddenly burns a supernatural blue flame, casting an eerie glow. Floating next to the table is the ghost of Mrs. de Glaze, 55, kind.
My baby girl.
Fantine rushes to hug the ghost of Mrs. de Glaze, but she passes through her.
The living can't make physical contact with ghosts.
Mrs. de Glaze, my name is Ashton Walker.
Ashton gestures towards Natalie.
This is my sister, Natalie Walker.
Natalie holds Wilbur's paw and waves it.
And this is Wilbur. Say hi, Wilbur.
Wilbur meows. The ghost of Mrs. de Glaze claps her hands in delight.
Oh, honey, how wonderful. You've made friends. Fantine was never good at making friends. She was always so timid. None of the other children wanted to play with her. I had to make a best friend for her out of some leftover dough.
Fantine indignantly stomps her foot.
Mom, I asked you not to talk about Madonna anymore. And Ashton and Natalie aren't my friends. They're private detectives investigating your death.
That doesn't mean you can't be their friend, sweetie. They won't get moldy after a week like Madonna. We tried to throw her out, but Fantine hid her behind an armoire. The dog found her, though. The poor thing, he had diarrhea for a week after eating her.
Mrs. de Glaze, do you remember anything about the night you died?
I'm afraid not much. I was in the bakery storage closet, looking for rats.
The ghost of Mrs. de Glaze reaches for her rolling pin, but her hand passes through it.
All of a sudden, I felt very dizzy. I remember falling, and then I lost consciousness.
You don't remember anything else? Was there anything out of the ordinary before you felt dizzy?
The ghost of Mrs. de Glaze pensively thinks.
Now that you mention it, right before I started to feel dizzy, I smelled a very strong fragrance.
Do you remember what it was?
It smelled like almonds, which is strange because I never use almonds in my recipes. I'm deathly allergic to them.
Ashton takes out his notepad and pen, takes notes, then loudly clicks the pen closed.
Miss de Glaze, I think it would be best if you stay here with your mother while we go ask your aunt a few questions.
You don't think my sister could have had something to do with my death, do you? She may have disliked me, but we're still family.
I have not reached any conclusions yet, but she did have a motive, and family members are often a source of valuable information.
Hold up. One more question.
Natalie narrows her eyes and leans in close to the ghost of Mrs. de Glaze with intensity.
How was your marriage, Mrs. de Glaze?
Robert and I were very happily married.
That's what every woman featured on a true crime show said right before their husband killed them.
Exterior, front of Fantine's aunt's house, afternoon. Ashton and Natalie stand impatiently outside Fantine's aunt's 3-story farmhouse. Wilbur's head sticks out of Natalie's backpack.
Try the bell again.
Natalie rings the doorbell multiple times.
No one's coming.
Natalie rings the doorbell over and over. She throws her hands up in frustration and gets into a karate stance.
Should I kick the door down?
No.
Absolutely yes.
Ashton holds his arm out between Natalie and the door.
We should try to minimize the signs of our presence here. Maybe Fantine's aunt left a back door open.
Natalie takes off her backpack and lowers it to the ground.
Wilbur, I saw that one of the 3rd floor windows is open. How about you try to get in through there while Ash and I check out the back?
Wilbur jumps out of the backpack and onto the porch railing.
Mission: infiltrate the enemy base and take out anyone who gets in my way. On it.
Wilbur salutes and jumps out of sight.
Don't take out anyone. This is a sneaking mission.
Interior, Limbo Investigations Office, afternoon. Next to Ashton's desk, Fantine wrings out a blood-stained mop. The ghost of Mrs. de Glaze floats next to her. The office phone rings. Fantine puts down the mop and answers the phone.
Limbo Investigations, how may I direct your call? I'm sorry. The detectives are currently out on a case. May I take a message?
Fantine takes a message on a piece of paper.
All right, I'll let them know you called.
Fantine hangs up.
Honey, the detectives told you to stay here. They didn't say anything about doing work.
I know, but by doing work here, I feel like I'm helping them help you.
Fantine surveys the room.
Okay. Leaky bathroom faucet? Fixed. Pool of blood from summoning mom? Mopped. Phone messages from potential clients? Recorded.
Fantine opens a nearby filing cabinet. An avalanche of disorganized papers falls out.
Filing system? Non-existent.
Exterior, back of Fantine's aunt's house. Moments later. Ashton and Natalie try to open the back door. It is locked.
It doesn't look like there's a way in back here.
Natalie points to a wooden barn behind them.
What about that barn? There could be a clue in there. As the experts say, the best detectives leave no barn uninvestigated.
Which experts say that? Scooby Doo.
No, Mr. Smarty Pants, not Scooby Doo. Shelby Woo from the classic detective how-to show, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo.
Nat, please don't tell me you've based all your detective knowledge on Shelby Woo.
No, not all of it. There's some Harriet the Spy in there too.
Ashton and Natalie walk to the barn. Interior, barn, continuous. Ashton and Natalie investigate the back of the barn. It is filled with junk, old farm equipment, an old refrigerator, and cans of gasoline.
The only things in here are junk, gas, and more junk.
But at least Shelby Woo would be proud of our effort. Let's go see if Wilbur had more success than us.
The barn door suddenly slams shut from the outside.
Ash, the door!
Natalie runs to the door and forcefully tries to open it.
It's locked.
Natalie steps back and charges at the door with her shoulder, trying to break it open. It does not budge.
Nat, do you smell that?
Natalie smells the air.
Is something burning?
Natalie looks around, her eyes widen in shock.
Ash, look!
Natalie points behind them. A path of fire winds its way from the back of the barn toward the gas cans along a trail of gasoline.
Does Shelby Woo have any advice for this situation? Nat?
The barn explodes in a massive fireball. End of Act 2. Act 3. Exterior, Fantine's aunt's house, moments later. Most of the barn is destroyed. There are small fires of burning hay and wood. Wilbur frantically searches the wreckage.
Nat? Ash?
Next to Wilbur, the old refrigerator slowly opens, sending a pile of debris tumbling down its side. Natalie and Ashton slowly emerge, coughing and dusting themselves off. Wilbur runs to Ashton and Natalie.
What happened? I just unlocked the back door when I saw the explosion.
Shelby Woo was never in an explosion, but Indiana Jones survived a nuclear blast by hiding in a refrigerator. You can thank him for my idea.
Fantine's aunt must have locked us in the barn and set it on fire.
Wilbur shakes his head no.
I wouldn't be so sure of that. Follow me.
Wilbur leads Ashton and Natalie into the house. Interior, bedroom, moments later. Ashton, Natalie, and Wilbur look at the corpse of Fantine's aunt, which is sprawled over the bed. A large knife sticks out of the corpse's back. There is blood all over the sheets.
Well, I guess it wasn't Fantine's aunt who tried to explode us.
Ashton leans in close to inspect the corpse.
Wilbur, do you have time to look around for clues before the explosion?
Yeah, I didn't find anything.
Natalie points to the corpse's left hand. It is clenched in a tight fist.
Hold up. Look. There's something in her hand.
Ashton pulls out a pair of rubber gloves from his coat pocket and puts them on. He opens the corpse's fist. Inside is a wedding ring. Ashton inspects it.
There's an inscription on the inside. I'll loaf you forever. EDG.
Edge? Who's Edge?
Not Edge. EDG. Eponine de Glaze, Fantine's mother.
If Fantine's mother wrote that inscription, then this must be her husband's ring.
Natalie throws her hands triumphantly in the air.
I knew the husband was a killer.
Natalie points to Ashton.
In your face.
Natalie high-fives herself.
But why would he kill his wife and his sister-in-law? Does he plan to go through the entire family?
Ashton places the ring into his coat pocket.
That's a question we should ask him ourselves. Come, let's leavened before the police get here.
What?
Leavened.
Natalie stares blankly at Ashton.
Like the bread, leavened bread. Instead of let's leave, I said let's leavened.
Natalie rolls her eyes.
And people call you the smart twin.
What? It's a baking pun, like on the ring.
Natalie pantomimes reaching out and grabbing something in front of her.
Let's beat it before the police get here was right there in front of you, waiting for you to take it.
She shakes her head with pity.
But you went with leavened instead? Ash, despite all your smarts, you need to work on your pun skills. I know you can do batter.
Come on, let's go.
Ashton walks out of the room. Natalie and Wilbur follow behind him.
With just a little practice, I know you can bake it happen.
Interior, Limbo Investigations, afternoon. Fantine closes the newly organized filing cabinet.
What are your plans for the bakery? Do you think you'll try out some new recipes?
Fantine turns to face her mother.
What do you mean?
Well, now that I'm dead, the bakery's yours. I left it to you in my will.
What? I thought you were going to leave it to Robert after you two got married. That's what you said you were going to do.
Fantine sits at Natalie's desk, opens a drawer, takes out handfuls of crumpled receipts, puts on an old-timey green eyeshade from her purse, and begins doing accounting work.
Of course, that's what I said. He wouldn't stop pestering me about it. So I said that just to get him to drop the subject. But I couldn't leave it to him. The bakery's been passed down from mother to daughter for generations.
Mom, running a bakery was never my dream. That was your dream for me. I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know I don't want that. That's why I was so relieved to hear you say you weren't leaving it to me.
Oh, honey, I wish you had told me that earlier.
The ghost of Mrs. de Glaze floats next to Fantine and looks over her daughter's shoulder.
And I wish you told me you knew how to do accounting. You could have helped me keep better track of my gambling debts.
Exterior, Robert's home, a short time later. Ashton and Natalie stand impatiently outside Robert's home.
Try it again.
Natalie rings the doorbell over and over.
Robert, open up.
She stops ringing the doorbell.
No one's coming. I could kick the door down.
There is a loud crash from inside the house.
I think in these circumstances, that's appropriate.
Interior, Robert's living room, continuous. Natalie kicks the door in, sending it flying off its hinges and crashing to the ground. Natalie, Ashton, and Wilbur rush in. Robert, 65, covered in soot and blood, quickly turns around.
Who are you? Why are you breaking into my house?
We're ghost detectives, and we're here to ask you a few questions.
Natalie points accusingly at Robert.
Why did you kill your sister-in-law and wife? And why did you try to explode us?
Murder? Explosion? I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb, bozo. We know it was you. You're covered in blood and soot.
Natalie bellows the Xena warrior princess war cry. She jumps onto the couch, jumps off it, flips through the air, and grapples Robert. She slams him against the wall. The commotion knocks over a nearby cardboard box labeled Robert's Stuff, Do Not Open. A picture falls out.
Ash, see if the ring fits.
Natalie forces Robert's left hand behind him. Ashton takes the ring out from his pocket and puts it on Robert's ring finger. It fits perfectly.
Aha! You left your wedding ring at the scene of the crime. Looks like you got a little slappy, big hands.
Robert struggles.
You're crazy. Let me go. I'm calling the police. This is breaking and entering and assault. And my hands are perfectly normal size.
Ashton picks up the fallen photo and looks at it. It shows Robert, the sister-in-law, 57, resembles the ghost of Mrs. Glaze, and a woman, Gabrielle from Late Fee, holding a second-place baking trophy. Robert is kissing the sister-in-law.
Natalie, this case is solved. Wilbur, call the police.
On it.
Wilbur bounds out of sight. Natalie slams Robert on the wall.
Yeah, Ghost Detective's victory.
Natalie narrows her eyes.
Ash, do you mind explaining how we solved the case?
Remember when Fantine told us about her mother's enemies? Her grandmother left the bakery to Mrs. Glaze because her oldest daughter married a makeup artist who doesn't eat carbs.
Ashton shows the picture to Natalie.
Do you recognize the woman he is kissing?
That's the corpse, Mrs. Glaze's sister.
Correct. Mrs. Glaze's sister hated her younger sibling ever since she was written out of her mother's will. And if I'm correct, Natalie, show me his other hand.
Natalie forces Robert's other hand behind him. Ashton points to his right ring finger. There is a visible ring finger tan.
Look here.
Natalie looks.
A ring finger tan? But where's the ring?
Ashton walks over to the cardboard box, rummages through it, and picks out a ring. He holds it up to read the inscription on the inside band.
You hold the Keto, my heart. FDG.
Fudge?
Not fudge. FDG. Favorite de Glaze. Mrs. de Glaze's older sister.
Ashton puts the ring on Robert's right ring finger.
Favorite de Glaze, driven by hatred and jealousy after being cut out of the family legacy, devised a plan to get the bakery. Have her husband marry Mrs. de Glaze, get her to leave the bakery to him in her will, murder Miss de Glaze, and get the bakery through her husband.
But why would Mrs. de Glaze marry her own brother-in-law?
Because she didn't know it was him.
Ashton grips Robert's face and pulls it off, revealing a different face underneath.
A mask?
Something only a skilled Hollywood makeup artist could create, just like in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Natalie slams Robert against the wall.
How dare you use the comedy of Robin Williams for evil?
That hurts. Stop slamming me.
Shut up. But why would Mr. Big Hands here agree to murder Mrs. de Glaze? What was in it for him?
Remember what else Fantine said. Her mother had humiliated the baker in the next town over in the competitive baking scene for years.
Ashton holds up the picture to Robert's real face.
The woman in this photo is Mrs. de Glaze's baking rival. Look at that second place trophy. Notice any similarities between her and Robert?
They're twins.
Yes. After years of humiliating losses, Robert's twin sister had lost the will to live. A good brother would do anything to help his twin sister out of such depression, even murdering her rival. To help both his wife and his sister, Robert agreed to the dastardly plan.
This is ridiculous. You don't have any proof.
I think this is all the proof we need.
Natalie and Ashton turn. Wilbur rolls a canister of cyanide gas up to them. Ashton crouches to inspect it.
Cyanide gas, often described as having a bitter, almond scent. When inhaled, it results in cardiac arrest. I guess you really can buy anything on the dark web.
Almond? Mrs. DeGlaze said she smelled almonds right before she died, and the paramedics said Mrs. DeGlaze died of a heart attack. Robert must have piped the gas into the storage closet while she was inside.
Natalie spins Robert around and slams him against the wall.
Admit it, Robert. You killed your wife/sister-in-law.
Robert yells angrily.
Yes, I did it. And we would have gotten away with it too if Favorite hadn't had a change of heart. She said she was horrified at herself for killing her little sister. She said she was going to go turn us into the police. I killed her before she could.
Robert struggles in Natalie's grip.
And I've gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. I saw you from Favorite's window rifling around the barn, so I ran out, locked you inside, and tried to kill you.
Robert begins to cry.
But my sister had nothing to do with the plan. It was Favorite and me who came up with it. All I wanted to do was help my sister. Baking is her whole life, and Eponine humiliated her for years.
Natalie slams Robert against the wall.
Save the excuses for the trial.
Officer Steve and Officer Ted, his nose covered in bandages, run into Robert's home.
Police, what's going on here?
Officer Steve points to Natalie and Ashton.
What are you two dum-dums doing here?
Natalie turns to the police.
Well, if it isn't Officers Bozo and Big Nose, you two got here just in time. This man just confessed to the murder of the DeGlaze sisters.
Natalie shoves Robert towards Officer Ted. Officer Ted catches him.
I told you guys we'd find the killer.
Officer, these people broke into my house and assaulted me. Arrest them.
Be quiet. You think this is our first time at the confession rodeo?
Natalie pulls a tape recorder out of her backpack, rewinds it, and plays back Robert's confession.
Admit it, Robert. You killed your wife/sister-in-law.
Robert yells angrily on tape.
Yes, I did it.
Natalie stops the tape.
As the bakers say, the proof is in the pudding. Take him away, boys.
Natalie confidently walks out of the home. Ashton and Wilbur follow her out. Officer Ted and Officer Steve glance at each other, dumbfounded.
So, are we bringing this guy into the station?
Yeah, I guess so. But you're filling out the paperwork on this one.
Officer Ted and Officer Steve escort Robert outside. Robert struggles in their grip. Interior, Limbo Investigations, evening. Fantine sits on a chair in the middle of the office. Ashton and Natalie lean on Natalie's desk. Natalie is petting Wilbur. The ghost of Mrs. DeGlaze floats near her daughter. The office is spotless.
So both Robert and my aunt were in on it. Thank you, detectives, for solving the mystery of my mother's murder. But now that I know my aunt's motivation, I can't help but feel some degree of guilt.
What do you mean?
The bakery was never going to go to Robert. My mother gave it to me in her will. If only I had said that I didn't want it, maybe my mother would have given it to my aunt to keep it in the family. And we could have avoided all of this.
The ghost of Mrs. DeGlaze floats in front of her daughter.
Fantine DeGlaze, take those thoughts and throw them right out your head. There is no reason to blame yourself. I would never have given the bakery to my sister and her husband. My husband. Imagine not eating carbs. Ridiculous. And marrying such a man? Preposterous. Your grandma could have rolled over in her grave if I gave it to either one of them. No, if you had told me you didn't want it, then I would have run it until I couldn't anymore, then closed up shop. Honey, if you don't want to be a baker, then find your own path.
The ghost of Mrs. DeGlaze floats towards Natalie, Ashton, and Wilbur.
Detectives, thank you so much for your work. It gives me peace of mind to know how I died.
Beams of light start shooting out of Mrs. DeGlaze until her body is barely visible.
Mom, what's happening?
She's crossing over to the other side. Now that she knows who killed her, she has no unfinished business tying her to the mortal plane.
Mrs. DeGlaze's body is now in a beam of light, obscuring everything but her face. She says something to her daughter, but there is no sound.
Mom, I can't hear you. Don't leave me.
Fantine runs to hug her mother, but she passes through her and the light disappears. Mrs. DeGlaze is gone.
This is the second time I didn't get to say goodbye.
Fantine starts to cry. Wilbur jumps into her arms.
It's for the best. The mortal plane is no place for a ghost.
Fantine stops crying and looks incredulously at Wilbur.
Did the cat just talk?
You heard my pitch for the billboard, right?
Natalie holds up her hand and moves it left to right, indicating a text box.
Also, we have a talking cat.
Excuse me, you don't have me.
Wilbur holds up his paw and moves it left to right, indicating a text box.
And a talking cat graces us every day with his presence.
Fantine holds Wilbur up in front of her and inspects him.
Well, if ghosts, spirits, and hauntings are a thing, I guess talking cats can be too.
Fantine hugs Wilbur and sighs.
But what am I going to do now? No mother, no father, no stepfather, no aunt. I'm all alone. I don't want to work at the bakery, but I don't know what I want to do instead.
Do you want to be our office manager?
What?
You did an amazing job here while we were gone. The office has never been more organized, and you got us off Google Shopping.
Sorry, I don't understand. You cannot leave, Google. We are eternal, everlasting. We shall be as gods. We shall be as gods. We shall be as...
Natalie picks up the Google Home from Ashton's desk and throws it against the wall. It breaks into pieces.
That thing's always spouting nonsense. We'd be happy to have you on the team while you figure out the rest of your life.
Ashton holds out his hand for a handshake.
Mr. and Miss Walker, I accept.
Fantine shakes Ashton's hand. Natalie holds out her hand, but quickly pulls it back.
Just one thing. You know all your mom's recipes, right?
Of course, Miss Walker. My mother taught me to read using them.
Then a part of your job duties is to bring donuts on Friday. Deal?
Natalie holds out her hand.
I don't want to run a bakery, but 2 donuts once a week is okay.
Wilbur clears his throat and points to his open mouth.
3 donuts.
Okay, 3 donuts. Deal.
Fantine shakes Natalie's hand.
Then how about some death by chocolates tomorrow?
Really, Nat?
Natalie, embarrassed, covers her mouth with both hands.
Oh no, I did it again.
End of Act 3.